48 hours away from the Alamo Bowl, I am joined by Mr. Ute himself, Kyle Gunther. Man, what's going on?
How are you?
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
you know what? I'm sure you watched the Pac-12 championship game. I don't want to bring up sour grapes, but are you like me that those guys may have blown an opportunity the program may not see for decades to come?
The stars were aligned. The Utes had so many seniors. They had so much talent on this team. And Oregon was an opponent that you looked at halfway through the year. You thought the Utes can outdo this. They can outgain this team. And the Utes started aggressive. I mean, they went for it on fourth down in their first possession, and then you saw Oregon make a couple of plays, and it just became too much. But this is still a very talented Utah team. It's very hard to get double-digit wins at this point in college football. But, yeah, the Utes had a potential playoff berth at their fingertips, and they came up short.
I honestly thought that Julian Blackmon play where he swooped in for that tackle for a loss, I think it was the first defensive play of the game for them. I thought that was going to set the tone, but it ended up being that Moss 4th and 1. We're never able to get it going offensively, at least in the first half.
No, but you did see Zach Moss have so much success running the football, and I think you're going to see plenty of that in the Alamo Bowl against Texas. Zach Moss was very much the consistent force there against Oregon. Well, Zach Moss has been the most consistent force of Utah football, really, maybe ever. Maybe he's the best running back ever at Utah. He's got a lot still left on his plate. I think the Utes are going to lean heavy on that run game against Texas. But, yeah, it's tough at times when you are a running football team and you get down to a team like Oregon. You can't just keep running ISO dive plays. Now, the Utes are best suited to build a lead early and then just grind that clock out with long possessions.
So now we're talking about the consolation prize on Tuesday. The Alamo Bowl, not a bad bowl. You got Texas. What do they have to do in terms of redemption?
Well, you got to win the bowl game. I mean, and Kyle Whittingham has the best bowl win record in college football history for a reason. But this is a very difficult Texas matchup for the Utes. Texas has a good receiving core. They got a mobile quarterback. Sam Ehlinger is a really good player overall. He's got a little bit of what Colt McCoy had for a long time with Texas. He's not nearly that same level of player, but Ehlinger can run it, and he's a pretty confident passer. They make aggressive throws at times. But to do that, the Utes are going to have to lean on that defensive line. So many great players in Utah's secondary are either going to sit out the ball game or they're out with injury. So it's up to the Utes' defensive line to speed up that process for Sam Ehlinger, try to get the ball out of his hands quicker, and then alleviate some pressure on a young Utah secondary. There's going to be some guys getting more reps for the bowl game than they've had all year.
Yeah, a Longhorn transfer and Cam Rising actually eligible to play in this game. They also have about 11, 12 players, I think, from the state of Texas, many of whom were snubbed by the Longhorns in the recruiting process. Do you expect guys like maybe a Keithy, a Jalen Dixon to really kind of step up?
When you're from Texas, playing in front of your home family, your home crowd, going back home, it's a very meaningful thing for these guys. Texas has a lot of pride. They say it's its own country. And it really is. These guys that are from Texas, they grew up with football as a part of the lexicon there, as a part of their lives. And so, yeah, when you get a chance to go back and do it in front of your family, that matters. But, yeah, that Texas pride is there, but it's also a little bit of Texas recruiting. Texas is the biggest state, and so they got the most population. You get a ton of big-time recruits from the state of Texas. And so the Utes are hoping to just put a good product out there so that in the future, when their name comes up in recruiting, some kid from Houston has said, you know, I did see that team a couple of years ago. They look good.
Morgan Scalley had one of the best secondaries in the country, perhaps the best. Right now you got Blackmon injured. Johnson has decided to focus on the next level. Now that things are depleted, what do you expect in terms of that Texas offense being able to do?
It would make sense that they would try to test this Utah secondary at this point. You try to find what you think is the weak link. Maybe it's Tariq Lewis. Maybe it's Josh Nurse. I mean, Texas will watch film, and they run a lot of receivers out there. So they're going to find matchups that they want, and they're going to say, we're going to try to pick on Javelin Guidry. Maybe they think he's not that fast. Maybe they're going to try to throw it over the top. But that's what any offensive coordinator does. They try to pick apart the weakness of that defense. But, again, it's up to the Utes' defensive line to get some pressure. I mean, how many All-Americans on this defense alone? I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, some of these guys are out, but the Utes' defensive line almost entirely was All-Conference and All-American, and they have to get wins. They have to get around the edge and get Sam Ehlinger to get the ball out of his hand quicker, and if he does that, then it won't be that big of an issue. But I think the Utes need to start fast because a couple of weeks ago when Texas last played, Texas Tech got an early lead, and they had some momentum going on, but Texas Tech couldn't really run the ball well enough to grind that game out. The Utes can. So if they can start fast, get a touchdown or two, lead on Texas, the Utes will just grind that clock out. It'll be a slow second half if that's the case.
Great analysis. Let me ask you this. Let's say that Tyler Huntley gets back on track and he just absolutely destroys the Burnt Orange. Where would this season rack up in terms of some of the great years that you guys, and you've been a part of in the past?
Well, Alex Smith and Brian Johnson are the ones that come to mind when you think of some of the great all-time quarterbacks, and certainly, Frank Dolce is a great name.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of great names that have played quarterback at Utah, but in terms of what they did, Alex Smith is going to be hard to top, and just being the first team to bust the BCS. Brian Johnson's the smartest football player I've ever seen, and then why isn't this the third best season, maybe the fourth best season ever? I think Tyler Huntley's in that discussion to have a top 5 season ever for not just a quarterback, but really how about for his career? Tyler Huntley's won a lot of games. He's won the Pac-12 South twice. You could argue Tyler Huntley's the third best quarterback ever at Utah.
Yeah, it would be nice to see him go out in style. You mentioned that great Kyle Whittingham Bowl record. Last year was the exception, though, where he kind of blew that one. So hopefully they can turn the tables and end the season on a positive note. Kyle, appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Mark.
Great as always.
Thanks for having me.